So many people ask me all the time if there's somebody you want to interview that you haven't. And I say, sure, my good friend, Harry Lennix. I talked to him, but I've never had a chance to really sit down and interview him. And it is a pleasure to bring in my buddy, Harry Lennix. Harry, how are you?
Kenny, I'm doing great. Thank you. All things considered, I guess I'm about as good as can be expected. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Now, are you in New York or are you in Los Angeles?
Well, I'm in New York. I was in LA a couple of weeks ago. I think about 2 weeks ago, I came back to New York.
Mhm.
I was in LA for a couple of weeks. Both places are a little bit like The Walking Dead, to some extent. It's like Zombieland.
Yeah. Have you started filming The Blacklist yet?
No, we were going to be starting next week, and then Sony and NBC had some issues they wanted to sort out, from what I understand. So hopefully we'll be filming in about a month or so.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah,
Boy,
yeah.
what a journey from the South Side of Chicago to one of the top actors in the business, one of the busiest actors in the business. Tell me about that journey from the South Side to stardom.
Well, it was a very long trip. From the South Side anywhere is a long trip. You have to get on a couple of L trains. No, but in all honesty, I started off to be a priest. I really thought that I was going to go ahead through the seminary and get ordained and do for other people what had been done for me. My father died when I was not quite two. And so I always had a love for service and for duty, obligation, that kind of thing. But something happened along the way. I guess I got into a play and somebody saw it and they thought, well, this kid has some talent. Maybe he should pursue this. And of course, there's nothing in the church that would say, hey, you have to give up acting altogether and never think about performance again or theater again. Sometimes there are priests who are actors or directors, do things, unless you are sort of determined to be a monk or live a life of poverty or something. But anyway, the other thing that happened, of course, is that I was introduced to young ladies, and those two things could not commingle. And
Right.
so I'm married now, but at the time I was, just in love with the idea of doing something different than what I had been doing. So yeah, I mean, that's what happened. I started acting more or less professionally while I was still at Northwestern University. That's where I went to undergrad. I didn't go to grad school, but so I started doing plays in the Chicago, professional community in between my sophomore and junior year. So, I was to the manner born, as it were, and then one thing led to another. So from the plays, people would come and see the plays. I got an agent. The agent got me auditions. At one point, I was actually substitute teaching in Chicago and went down to an audition for the Five Heartbeats after I took a half day. And a couple months later, I found out that I got the part, and mostly due, I think, to the fact that David Allen Greer got this television show in living color. So he wasn't able to do the movie The Five Heartbeats, nor was, Keenan Wayans. Keenan Wayans was supposed to play JT, the part that Leon played in the movie. That was going to be Keenan Wayans. I think that there was talk about Denzel Washington playing Eddie King Jr. All of those. So everybody had, all of us had other people who were going to play the part, but circumstances, fate, God, basically determined that we would be the people who comprised that. And then after the Five Heartbeats, I came back to school to teach in the Chicago public school system at Bass Elementary School, not too far, probably, I don't think, from you, at 6th and Racine. And sometime between those multiple bowling ball pins I was juggling in the air, doing plays in Chicago, doing movies in Hollywood, doing movies in Chicago, producing my own work, teaching, owning a grocery store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I've always had a lot of things that have been interesting to me, and I never just was an actor. I'm not just an actor now. I do a fair amount of scholarship and a fair amount of, for lack of a better word, activism. I've been a surrogate, a number of times for many politicians, most recently Ben Jealous, who ran for the Maryland governor. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious, and I keep a lot of things moving.
Was the Five Heartbeats your biggest break? Was that the break that got you over the hump? Because you've been in over 40 movies right
Mm.
now.
I think I did 40 movies last year. Okay. No, it's interesting. The Five Heartbeats was certainly a seminal thing. In terms of Black America, the Five Heartbeats was the thing that kind of put me on the map. But, it's very curious. In my career, I've had sort of three different careers. I've had a career in Black entertainment, so to speak. Things that you would be, know, the Five Heartbeats, of course, Mo Money, Get on the Bus, these things. But I've also had a kind of interesting career in classical theater and classical films. I'm in the movie called Titus Andronicus, which did as much for me in that sphere as the Five Heartbeats did for me in the Black entertainment sphere. So, white teenage girls know me from a television show I did called Dollhouse. White middle class men know me from, The Blacklist. And so sometimes none of those things don't always line up. There's not a whole lot of interface between some of those worlds, is no surprise to you. But for whatever reason, I look a certain way, sound a certain way. I had a certain amount of training, and it has made my career pretty versatile. And so I don't just go for one kind of thing.
Well, the one thing that stands out to me, the roles that you play, you don't play certain roles. You're not the guy on the street. You're not the gangster. You're a quality human being. So you take quality roles. Is that important to you? That, hey, I won't just take any role to be on TV.
Curiously, I did earlier in my career, and maybe even a little less than early in my career, I played a couple of parts, not a whole lot, but where I was a gangster. For example, I did a movie called The Mary Thomas Story, where I played the gang leader that recruits Leon, Isaiah Thomas's brother.
Yeah.
In the narrative, I recruit him to be a member of the gang, presumably the Vice Lords, I think. But and then I did a movie called Hell Cab, where I play a very unsavory character who's about to beat up his girlfriend in the back of a cab. Not funny, but unusual for me. So yeah, that kind of stuff. But so I like I'm an actor. I like playing all kinds of parts. That said, I don't like to do, or I will not do, within the context of something that is demeaning or dehumanizing or is not interesting work or doesn't tell the story in the way that I think will be of a benefit. I tend not to do those things. And I've paid a price for that. I'm not a household name, perhaps in many people's minds. But, as you said, as you've indicated, I've had a great career. I consider it second really to no one. I wouldn't have traded it. I didn't get to do everything that I wanted to do, but I'm still in the middle of it. So, I'm working on things all the time. Yeah.
Tell me about one of my favorite movies. I watch it all the time. Love and Basketball. You were Monica's dad. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that for me.
Right. Well, it's one of those, I met Gina Prince Bythewood, who's lovely, through Reggie Rock Bythewood, and he wrote the screenplay for Get on the Bus, which is about the Million Man March. We did it about a year after the Million Man March. We did this movie which commemorated it, and Reggie, I think at that time he was just engaged to Gina, but Gina met me there, and we, Reggie and I became friends, and I became kind of friends with the family. And over the course of the next couple of years, Gina had this role for me. She just offered me the part. I got the chance to, I knew that Alfre Woodard was going to be in it. And Alfre, of course, was in that Mary Thomas story that I just mentioned. She played Mary Thomas, Isaiah Thomas's mother. So I adore her. And I found out that I was going to be playing her husband in this. She's a beautiful woman. And so I was excited about that. And of course, Sanaa Lathan and her father, Stan Lathan. Tendaji, I know that whole family just through the industry. So in a lot of ways, it was kind of like hanging out and, with your friends and doing a really iconic movie now. That movie,
Right.
yeah, I think it's got to be 25 years old now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
25 or 20,
20.
but
It's 20.
I watch it all the time. I think
Yeah.
I've seen it a million times. It's a great story. Hey,
Yeah.
I cannot talk to you without asking you about the role you played in Ray. Just a great movie, a great role. How does that come about? And how was it working with the iconic Jamie Foxx?
I have to tell you, Kenny, there were times I looked across, sometimes they would have pictures of the real Ray Charles from albums and so forth as set dressing. And so, he was in our minds, of course, a lot. But there were times I would look across the room and see Jamie Foxx and think that was Ray Charles. He channeled something like he was. I don't know it's certainly, I think, his best work. He's a very good, very talented actor, of course, but so that's saying something. But he found something, just as a musician, as a performer, as his ability to sort of capture people's nuances as a comedian and an impersonator, an extraordinary role. And I was privileged, to be a part of that movie. There was, that's a heck of a cast. That's a who's who. You got Regina King, nominated for Academy Awards. I think she won, didn't she?
She won, yes.
Yeah.
She did win.
Emmys, nominated, won Emmys as director and actress. You got Bokeem Woodbine, who's my buddy, my pal. Ingenue Ellis. Wendell Pierce. You got so many people that are in it, and we all came to play, and it was a great time. I got to do it in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and in Baton Rouge. I have a lot of family from my father's side down in the New Orleans area, a little place called La Place, where, by the way, the scene of the largest slave revolt in the history of the United States was La Place.
Wow.
And so I presume that some of my ancestors were involved in that. It didn't quite turn out like they wanted it to, but the spirit lived. The spirit lived.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was fun, man. Taylor Hackford did a great job directed the movie, and a certain James White, brother, wrote the screenplay, and we became, good friends. It was a great time. My buddy Tom Bird was in it, who from a lot of Spike Lee movies.
Right.
Lots of people. Man, Terrence Howard is in the movie. So
it's a great. Now, you've been in over 20 television series, including The Blacklist, which is going to the 7th year, I think, 6 or 7.
Going into 8.
8. Okay, your 8th year. What's the difference between being a movie actor and a television actor?
Well, anymore, not very much. Like anymore, they are doing a lot of movies that are either stripped down very much, like you have low budget, for lack of a better term, movies, where they spend $3 million or less. I think that qualifies as low budget. And they're doing a lot of high-end television. In the case of Blacklist, it's high-end television. Some of these television shows are spending $10 million per episode on it. I can't remember what Westworld was, but that was quite a lot of money. And I know that House of Cards was a whole lot of money, like $10 million an episode. So when you're doing that for 45 minutes or 47 or whatever minutes of footage, you can compete with very high-end films. The only things you can't really compare those to are like those big tentpole, Justice League or Avenger movies in terms of that kind of budget. So television has improved greatly. The technology has really leveled out the playing field in terms of what is possible to do on camera. Everybody in their own little home computer has all sorts of effects they can do for, $1,000 or whatever it is. Now you can buy, Final Cut and cut your own movie together. You can use your phone,
right?
And do your own thing. Yeah, it's a brave new world in that sense. And I think that this pandemic, if anything, has leveled out the playing field even more, because content hasn't been producible for some time. People are doing things now in a few locations, internationally and domestically. but that's very few compared to what was going on in New York City. There were sometimes you got 60 productions here at any given time.
Right.
LA, you know, you have, so now there might be 6, you know, if that.
Yeah. If that, yeah.
If that, and that's after several months of having nothing. So I think that this is going to be a quite interesting new time. The industry was changing anyway. Less and less people were going to the movies on the whole anyway. And I think now some of these exhibitors, Cineplex, AMC, all of these places may not be coming back in the way that we thought. Is that going to be sustainable? Are people just going to get big, huge television screens in their homes, as many people have already? Is that where they're going to be, consuming content? Will they be able to have first-run experiences like at the movie at home, and they just pay a price for that? So these questions were going to be important anyway, and now that's been accelerated. So I think that in this new world, a lot more people will get a chance to contribute to production, perhaps even exhibition and distribution, things like that.
What advice would you give someone who at Northwestern, like you went to, or say read it now because it's not Quigley South anymore, that wants to be the next Harry Lennix? They see you, they love your work. Hey, I can do that. What do you tell that youngster?
Well, you know, my goal has always been to breathe life into any dream. And, the dream comes with a lot of self-contained issues. Some are going to help you. Some parts of a dream are going to be pleasant, and some parts of a dream are going to be not so pleasant. There are going to be some bumps in the road. But the people who are designed to do this will know. If it's a hobby, sure, why not? Be an amateur. There's all sorts of cool projects you could do in your church, in your community. Who knows? People, as I say, lots of people are doing content creation right now, and you never know what's going to hit. But that being the case, it's difficult. A lot of people want to do this, and you have to be willing to give up certain things like job security, knowing where your next meal is going to come from sometimes, rejection on an almost constant basis. Even now I have to deal with, being rejected or not accepted or what have you, for not picked, not chosen for a lot of things. A lot of the things that pay the best are highly competitive. And if you have a bigger name, or if you have a stronger agent, or, those kinds of things, but the things that are meant for you will be for you. So I tell people who are interested in this, the next Harry Lennix, just what was told to me, which is, study, as it says in 2 Timothy, I think, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth.
Beautiful.
To show thyself approved. So that's what I say.
Well, let me ask you, we're some real trying times right now. You're an actor, you're around actors all the time. Are you happy that our athletes and our actors are now standing up and being heard and letting their voice be heard? I mean, years ago, you didn't see this. Now, our actors are standing up saying enough is enough.
Yeah, well, I certainly think that the athletes who are, trying to be a voice for a change in a good direction is good. I have a very interesting take on the acting thing, because actors, will say whatever you pay them to say. So I think, like we are paid to be something other than what we actually are. So my question becomes, certainly by all means, people should say what it is that they're compelled, do what they feel compelled to do as individual citizens. But I think as public figures, you run the risk of not always being able to line up what your job is, which is a duty in itself. See, I think, Kenny, that acting is activism. I think that being an actor, being an athlete, doing your profession, whatever it may be, being a bus driver is an action. You're an activist in that way. You are making sure that people get from point A to point B. You get paid to do that. It's a noble profession. Picking up garbage is a noble profession. You're keeping the world. That is activism in itself. when it comes to actors doing that, coming out and actually voicing as advocates for something, I think that you run the risk of not being entirely believable at all the times.
Mm-hmm.
We are at our best. I think actors are we're behavioral scientists. We look at human behavior in a society through time in particular circumstances and conditions. And we observe that, and then we recreate that, we represent that in a narrative, what might be referred to as a mimesis. We are mimes, same word that mime or meme come from saying that we are representing the truth and are not meant to be in itself the truth. And so that's a dilemma. That's a dilemma. So I say, that people who are actors who might have done things where they're, for example, let's just say my great goal was to defund or demolish the NRA, National Rifle Association. But I have a career that's like Arnold Schwarzenegger's, and I'm using assault rifles all the time on screen, and it's not lining up with what I'm saying, as a private citizen. Then that's a dilemma. And one of those things is not true. Now, your job as an actor is to tell what is not true. Your job as a private individual, as an actor, may sometimes be difficult to know what is true for you. So I would say that most actors, in my view, would be safer sort of contributing quietly, privately, without putting themselves up to that scrutiny, because in some way they could perhaps bring down the cause in itself, but certainly leave themselves out to dry, because if they do not always act in roles that line up to what they personally believe, then they could be called out for inconsistency at the best.
Well, Harry, I talked about the 40 movies, over 20 TV series. My aunt would wring my neck if I didn't mention you also won a Chicago Emmy for her documentary, DuSable to Obama. My aunt Barbara Allen, she would wring my neck. So you never forget where you came from. Chicago is your hometown.
Yes, it is. Your aunt is my dear friend. I love her. She did a heck of a job with that doc. I'm so proud of that. I was just watching it the other day. You can see it on YouTube. So I was very proud of that.
Well, Harry, I know you're such a busy man. I want to thank you so much for your words of wisdom. I know you get to Chicago as much as you can, right?
Yeah, but that's not very much. As much as I can. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there soon. I've got a project that we're working on the South Side called the Lillian Marcy Center for the Performing Arts. And, so it's going to be a performance arts center, kind of like the Black version of the Lincoln Center. So housing a bunch of community organizations, professional organizations that don't have a home, but there's an audience that wants to see them and wants to know that they can go to a nice, safe place where it will be world class, where you can see whatever you want to see. But that stuff which speaks to our experience.
Okay. Well, Harry, when you get here, let me know and we'll come over and see the new place. Hey, I want to thank you so much for taking time out being with me.
Great to talk to you, Katie. Thanks. Let's do it again.
You got it, buddy.
Okay. Take care.